The listeners' views on the fixture at Priestfield. I'm Sam Fielding, and this is the Seasiders Podcast Friday Night Preview Show. Yes, good evening and welcome to the Friday Night Preview Show live on this Seasiders Podcast. Welcome to those listening on YouTube, Facebook and also Twitter. Remember to leave comments. We'll read them out as much as we can throughout the show, whether we're talking about players, predictions and much more. Anyway, we do have two guests this evening joining me on the show. The first is Tom Main. Tom, first of all, great to have you on the show again. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. Thanks for having me on again.
It's no worries. It's great to have you back on after a good debut last year, and we'll see if you get your hat-trick ball if goes well this evening. We've also got Matt from Gills in the blood. He is a Gillingham fan. Matt, welcome to the Friday Night Preview Show.
Hey, fellas. Thanks for the invite. Appreciate you having me on.
It's okay. No worries. It's great to have an insight, especially live ahead of Blackpool's opponents this weekend. So hopefully Blackpool fans who are listening, and maybe some Gillingham fans might find out a little bit more about what they'll have on offer this Saturday in the Sky Bet League One fixture. Matt, first of all, we'll come to you. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got supporting Gillingham.
First game, I suppose, like most people, was my old man took me. That was 1989. I'm giving away my age here a little bit. Played Northampton. I think we won 1-0. Don't remember anything about the game really. Just that it was live football. I was 7 or 8 at the time, and yeah, it was just great to be involved and that buzz of walking to a football ground. And don't get me wrong, it was a dilapidated old hellhole back then, but it was live football. And then obviously as I got a bit older and was allowed to go out on my own, me and 3 mates used to go on a train. First season I started going regularly. Glory Hunter was actually the first season after Paul Scally took over, when Tony Pulis got us out of what's now League Two into League One at the first attempt. So it weren't a bad time to start going. And then then we probably punched well above our weight for pretty much a decade up to 2005 when we were relegated out of the Championship, and we've not been back since.
I guess technically you haven't been back since probably March watching it. How have you found it since lockdown? It must be strange not being able to go to home and away games for you.
I'm in the same boat as every proper football fan up and down the country. It's horrible, isn't it? And it's nice to have it back on the telly, and it's good to be able to watch our own clubs again. But there's nothing that beats getting up on a Saturday and then looking forward to meeting up with your mates and talking to people that you see en route to the ground every week and being inside the ground. And obviously in terms of trying to do a YouTube channel, it was slim pickings for a while. We was lucky in the sense that I managed to get hold of a lot of ex-pros on like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, and managed to interview them via Skype and that type of thing. So that kept us ticking over for the first couple of months. And obviously there's more scope for content now because we can do our match previews and our Monday reviews. And we've tried a couple of match day lives from my sofa, and it's like Gogglebox, and it's not the same, but it's been well enough received by the Gills fans, and we appreciate people watching it when it's far from ideal.
I obviously talking about kind of Gills in the blood. Do you want to kind of give it a shout out? Obviously, people who maybe don't know too much about the channel, should we say?
Well, yeah, it is what it is. I started it in February 2017. I'd been invited onto another fan channel, and I thought it was something I wanted to do. So rather than just be a guest, I decided to set my own one up. And 3.5 years later, we're still going strong. Like I say, we do 3 regular videos. So that's a Thursday, we do like a weekly review, come match preview video. Saturday, we do match day lives, obviously, when we can go to games. Monday, I do a Monday review where I can look back at the weekend. And then obviously, if there's weekday fixtures, we go to them as well when we're allowed. And we was really lucky right at the start. We was able to do quite a lot of interviews with the playing staff, but that's all been vetoed now by the powers that be, unfortunately. But yeah, we did a series called Gills in the Blood Chats to, and we spoke to Tom Eaves, Bradley Dack, and people like that, which was good fun. But now it's solely ex-pros and people that are not contracted to the football club we have to try and get in touch with.
I guess you've got some kind of good stories to tell from those former players, haven't you? I know, speaking to some of the Blackpool former players before, great insights to what the time they had at the club. So definitely check out the channel. We'll share it as much as we can on social media throughout the night. Talking about Gillingham, they come into this fixture having played 2 league games already this season. The first one was a loss against Hull City, and then they won 3-2 away at Wigan last weekend. Obviously, they welcomed Blackpool here after a midweek trip to Stoke City in the Carabao Cup, where they lost 1-0 and exit the competition. Matt, we talk about there, and I know you've had other cup games as well, but how would you assess Gillingham's start to the season?
Promising, I'd say. I think, again, I'll keep saying the same thing. We're all in the same boat as football clubs, and we're all probably playing catch-up. The pre-season was probably condensed into sort of half the time that was ideal that we normally get, and the cup run's been nice in the sense that it's been an extended pre-season probably, and you can rest and rotate. I mean, we don't have the biggest squad. We've only got, I think, 20 professionals, and we've got 2 of them out long term at the moment. We had a keeper injured in the week, so didn't have a keeper on the bench, but that's the sign of the times, unfortunately, when you're in a middle of a worldwide pandemic. And but no, it's been promising. Like I say, I think we started off with 4 home games and beat Southend. Wasn't great first game, but we got the job done, which I think is always a good sign if you can win football matches when you're not playing your best. We were decent, really decent for an hour against Crawley in the much maligned EFL trophy. But again, for me, I don't see it as a, it's not a great competition, and it's probably had its value diminished because of letting Premier League B teams into it, and it's meant to be under 23 sides. And I think you've seen people like Shay Given and Peter Crouch have played in it in the last couple of seasons, double 23 and 21. But, that's for another chat. But yeah, we were decent against Crawley. We were disappointing against Hull. But credit to Hull, I thought they were a lot better than I'd envisaged them being. I thought they'd come down and struggle because they were, absolutely shocking after Christmas in the Championship, and I thought it was probably an ideal time to play them. But they were better than us. We didn't get out of second gear, and they deserved the points. And one thing I've said about us so far is we're very young. We look a bit naive at times, especially defensively. But then we went to Wigan last week, and I thought we were really good value for the win. We scored 3 really good goals, created chances. Defensively, again, we weren't great and conceded 2 soft ones. And then in the week, Stoke, they were simply better than us. They've got, they're Championship players for a reason. I know they've not been good for a couple of years, but their front 3, I think, to start with was Tyrese Campbell, who's been decent on loan in this division. Lee Gregory's been in the Championship for years. James McLean's a full international for Ireland, whether you like him or not, and some of the stuff he does. And then they bring off Gregory halfway through the second half and bring on Stephen Fletcher, who's a Scottish international. So we was up against it. We had a team of kids out. We had an 18-year-old in goal, and we didn't disgrace ourselves. I said, ironically, it was probably our best defensive performance of the season against a team that kept it better than anyone we've played so far.
Does that give you confidence then going into this weekend's game, or could it be a bit of a distraction playing that midweek fixture where Blackpool have had 7 days rest?
Bit of both, I suppose. And then again, you've only played 4, haven't you? So I suppose we could say you're well rested, but Gills are, further along the line in terms of match fitness and continuity and consistency and that type of thing. So I don't think we really know at the moment, and we'll probably only find out properly at 3 o'clock tomorrow.
Obviously, you briefly spoke there about the win against Wigan, a great win, I must say. Nice to get the first 3 points of the season. Like I said before, that must just give you so much confidence going into it against a side who, now after a few more signings, are really going to be up there come the end of the season, with that being Blackpool.
Sorry,
obviously a win against Wigan at the weekend. Good to get the first 3 points, but you talked about there the squad being short, Blackpool being kind of promotion or playoff hopefuls. You must give you confidence going into this game at home. Yeah,
definitely. And our home form's been decent for a long time now, especially since Steve Evans took over. I mean, for 2 or 3 seasons prior to Evans coming in, and I wasn't a fan of the Evans appointment. We all know he has a history within the game, but I'm willing to give everyone a second chance. And I said that if he makes us a better football team and he makes us win more football matches, then I'll be happy. But I think we've lost 2 league games at home since beginning of November last year. Obviously, we've had a slightly bigger gap of not playing, but it's still a phenomenal record. I think it's only Hull 2 weeks ago and Wimbledon, ironically, which was the last home game before COVID struck. Aside from that, we've not lost in the league for the best part of a year. So yeah, in terms of our home form, it's decent. There's no crowd, so does it then have the same effect? There's no rain of men trying to suck it into the net second half if we're shooting that way. And different people, we don't know how they're going to react to playing in front of empty stadiums. From our point of view, it might help because we've got a load of kids, so they're used to playing under 23s football where there's no one there. So, but you never know. Like I say, we're all still sort of learning on the job, so to speak, at the moment. But I think in terms of tomorrow, it'll be a good game. I think it'll be two sides that'll be trying to win. I think it'll be two sides that, especially from our point of view, will be better going forward than we are defensively. I had a look a bit at your form. I've noticed you've not scored a goal on the road in your two fixtures this season, but you know it's early days. It's nothing to be reading too much into. But I did notice that your away form's been pretty shocking for quite a while.
Well, yeah. Well, again, Tom might come in here, but again, we've had Simon Grayson come in. I think we drew 2-2 away at your place last season. Obviously, you went 2 goals ahead. We'll come to that game later on. But again, a change in manager. Neil Critchley's come in, a change of ideas, philosophy around the club, and I think Tom, you'll agree with me here that he's brought this positivity around Blackpool, and with the 3 points against Swindon and the 2 performances this season in the league, Blackpool go to Gillingham full of confidence.
Yeah, completely agree. I think we played Stoke similar to you early doors this season in the Cup, and we played them off the park, to be fair, created a lot of chances. Probably should have conceded a couple, but like Sam's alluded to, Critchley's come in and he's got a completely different philosophy than Grayson had. And I think my last away game was Wickham. And I just remember looking at the end of the match, someone sent me a picture of their average positioning of the players. And I think about 9 of the players were clumped together on the far left-hand side of the pitch. There was no shape, no ideas. There's only because of a young Dewsbury Hall now starting at Leicester in the Cup, for example, against Arsenal. Did we have some creativity that game? Grayson just completely lost the plot, and now we've got a completely different side. 16, I think, have left the club now, and 12 have come in, so including some real quality signings. So I think there won't be an issue on the road anymore with Critchley's philosophy and the way we pass the ball about.
Yeah, I've got a few people. We've got someone from Tulsa in Oklahoma watching the show, so welcome to the show, Michael. We've also got Phil Hornby, who works at ITV. Phil, great to have you with us, and also the other 40-odd people who are watching live at the moment. Tom, obviously we've heard Matt there talk about Gillingham, but what are your thoughts on Gillingham? What do you think threats they'll pose this weekend?
Matt's alluded to it. At home, they're a really solid side. I think when at full strength, they are one of the most dangerous sides in the league. They've made some shrewd signings this season so far. I'm not sure on the exact number. I think it's double digits, isn't it, Matt?
13, I think, with Dominic Samuel coming in on Monday. I think I read the other day.
Yeah, some quality signings. So I think Eccles from Coventry is a really good sign, and you've got who was it? Dempsey from Fleetwood, who's your captain, though, is out and injured now. O'Keefe is injured, but at full strength, they're a really good side. Whether tomorrow losing those players is going to be sort of a detrimental effect on the result, I think if we play like we did early doors, I think we could get into them early doors, and I think they'll be well drilled. But if we can get behind early, get in front early, I think we'll be in a decent stead to get the 3 points. To be honest with you, feeling confident.
You say that with a big grin on your face. I know you wanted to ask Matt a question, Tom. I'll let you ask that now whilst we're on the topic of Gillingham.
Yeah, I was just saying, talk about your signings. Who do you think's been the most successful bit of business this season, and who do you think is going to have the best season in terms of your new signings?
I think, I've said it, if anyone follows me on Twitter, I think Jordan Graham at the moment is to stand out. He should be probably playing Championship if it wasn't for injuries. I know he was highly rated at Wolves as a youngster, and his career's probably stalled a little bit because he had a massive ACL problem that kept him out of the game for a long time. But we had him on loan back end of last season, and obviously only played sort of 6-7 games, and I think half of them were from the bench. And then we all know it all got stopped too early, unfortunately. But there were flashes of his ability in games, especially I remember Southend away on a Tuesday night, and he isolated the fullback, drop of the shoulder, and got to the byline. And that's probably not a way that Gills have been renowned for playing in the last few seasons. We tend to play the diamond and rely on our fullbacks to get on and provide width, and then essentially remain solid in the middle of the park and make ourselves hard to beat. But it seems we're trying to evolve that this season, and Steve Evans has gone with a 4-2-3-1/4-3-3 with and without the ball. Graham provides natural width from that side, and young Trey Coyle's been decent from the left, who we've got on loan from Arsenal. But yeah, for me, the standout's got to be Jordan Graham. He's our top scorer at the moment. Obviously, scored 2 last week against Wigan. Set up the other. I think he's set up 1 this season as well. So I think he's got 3 goals and 1 or 2 assists so far. So I think if we can keep him fit, then we've probably got someone that's potentially too good for this division, dare I say it.
What's your thoughts on Dominic Samuel signing? Obviously, you lost Tom Eaves and a few other players, which I think is a huge miss for you. And he was a really key player for you, wasn't he? So, do you think Dominic Samuel is going to fill the gap and score the goals, or do you think he'll just add to your team?
And he's been decent at this level before, albeit in loan spells. I think he's at the stage of his career now, and I think he's alluded to that in one of his interviews where he says he needs to settle down and he needs to play games. He's 26 now. We had him when he was a kid. 5 years ago, blimey. We had him under when the late Justin Edinburgh was in charge, and that season 15-16 when we probably should have got in the playoffs at the very least. I think we was in the top 6 up until game 43, and we ended up finishing 9th, which was our lowest position of the whole campaign. But he was really good at the start of that loan spell. I think he ended up with 7 in about 24, 25 games. So if you're going 1 in 3, if he plays 50 games for this season, he scores 15. I don't think that's not a bad return at League One level, especially on a free transfer. But you never know.
Yeah.
If he hits the ground running and scores early doors, then he might go on a bit of a run and he could get more. But I'm confident if he plays regular games, he'll get a dozen at least. I think Dane Oliver's been one that's probably come in under the radar a little bit, and people are like, "Oh, he's League Two. Is he going to step up?" I think he's been really impressive.
Northampton, wasn't he?
Mountain. I don't think. He seems to, he has obviously, but he just doesn't seem to lose aerial battles. And if you've got that, and then you've got pace from the sides that can get him beyond, I think it makes for a really good sort of mixture. And it'd be interesting to see now that Samuel is available, whether we stick to the 4-3-3 and play a lone striker, or whether we mix it up and maybe try and get 2 right up top. But for me, I'd start him on the bench tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, very, very interesting insight into other players coming in and out of the club there. What I have got is an interview which you alluded to there, Matt, from Dominic's signing. So we'll play that. Obviously, 26-year-old returns after his second spell after agreeing terms earlier this week. He left Blackburn Rovers in the summer, and it's said that Gillingham fought off championship clubs for his signature. So we'll have a little break from us too, but here's what Dominic Samuel had to say after joining Gillingham.
Firstly, welcome back, Dom. Just give us your first thoughts on returning to Gills.
It was a no-brainer, to be fair. Obviously, my last loan spell here a few years ago, I did well. Quite familiar with the fans as well. And it just felt like the right choice for me at this time.
For a striker of your pedigree and your record, I'm sure there were plenty of options on the table. But why did you choose Gillingham over those other options?
It just comes down to where your heart feels. How comfortable you feel at a club, and the gaffer here made me feel so welcome, and he made me feel like I do belong here, and I feel like there will be great success here.
In terms of fitness, where would you say you're at? I know you've had an injury, but of course you've played several games earlier this year, so actually fitness-wise you must be close to 100%.
Yeah, I'd say if 100%, to be fair. The injury was a while back now. I've played throughout much of the season last season, should I say, and right now I just feel fit and ready to go.
Yeah, that was the new Gillingham signing, Dominic Samuel speaking there ahead of after agreeing his move to Gillingham. We have briefly talked about him there. We're going to move a few subjects around this evening, but Blackpool as well announced a new signing this weekend. They announced former Everton and Ipswich left-back Luke Garbett on a 12-month contract. The 27-year-old has represented England on the 21s level and has had over 100 appearances on loan at many EFL clubs. Garbett said in his move, he's pleased to be here and looking forward to working with the manager, Neil Critchley. I liked what he had to say to me before I signed, and that was a big factor for me. He spent a time at Liverpool developing players, and I'm definitely looking forward to it. There's big plans at Blackpool, and hopefully I can be part of what's to come this season. Tom, before we play the interview that Neil Critchley spoke about Garbett, are you really excited about this signing?
Yeah, it was one that came right under the radar, wasn't it? So it wasn't talked about at all, really. And then I sort of refreshed Twitter one day and I just saw loads of people talking about it, and I couldn't quite believe it, to be honest with you, because I know a few Ipswich fans and they tried to get him, and I know a few other championship clubs were trying to get him as well, and he may have wanted to move elsewhere, who knows? But at the same time, I think Blackpool have done enough to make him realise that we're onto something good, and I personally think it's probably up there with our best signing. If he gets fit and he plays regularly, I think is exactly what we need. He's 27, but it's definitely some additional experience. He has played at many clubs. He was at Ipswich last season. Whilst they had a good run, I think he scored a penalty against us as well, didn't he? So yeah, solid signing. Can play on the wing as well. Can add to the attack because I think Mitch has been doing a good job. Or he did do a good job against Swindon, so they could play together really well. So it's another option to the squad, and it's certainly a marquee signing in my opinion, especially for League One.
I guess when you look at where he can play, it makes you wonder what Critchley is going to do at the back. Is he going to move Husband in that central area? Yeah. Is he going to keep Nottingham and Ekpiteta in there? Now he's got options now to maybe play 3 at the back with addition of Garbett, with Husband in there playing the left side. Again, it opens many options for the manager, and it's a good headache to have.
Yeah, my first thought was he's moving Husband straight in the centre back. So we'll have to see. I know, okay, Husband can play there, but is it his best position? We spoke about this on the last podcast last week, and where Husband could fit in now, and whether I would change it next game because I know he is fit, who knows? But like I said before, it gives us options, and it gives us very good options, and a more of a migraine for Critchley more than a headache because there's some real good quality in the squad now.
I was going to have another break. Here's what Neil Critchley had to say after Luke Garbett signed for Blackpool.
And Luke Garbett is another new face that you brought in this week. What will he bring to the team this season?
A tremendous amount of quality. Something a bit different about lefties, left footers with real quality. He's got that. He provides a really good attacking outlet on that side of the pitch. He brings competition to the squad, which I think is really important. And he brings also a little bit of experience and seniority into the squad as well. You've only got to see that from the last couple of days he's been here, the way he conducts himself, the way he trains. It's really professional, and he wants to improve. He wants to get better, and hopefully we can help him to do that this season.
That is what Neil Critchley had to say after Luke Garbett signed on the dotted line for Blackpool this week. Again, the transfer window is open for a few more weeks. Matt, do you expect kind of Gillingham to make more signings ahead of that deadline? There's only going to be 2 months between the kind of winter transfer window opening, so not a quite quick turnaround really for clubs this season.
Yeah, it's going to be a weird one again, isn't it? Like you say, there's not much of a gap when this one shuts and then the next one will suddenly be upon us. But I'd hope we do make at least a couple more. Like I said earlier on, we're down at the bare bones already, and we're only 6 games in, unfortunately, with Dempsey and O'Keefe being ruled out long term. But I still think we need another left back to cover Connor Ogilvie. Ideally, if we could get someone who could, like last season, we had Tom O'Connor on loan from Southampton, who was really good, who could play left back, wing back, and he played left side of a diamond. And I think, especially at the moment with the current financial climate, I think it's key and it's vital that you get players that can all play 1 or 2 positions. I know I've always been brought up on you need 2 people per position, but I think 22 would be the absolute maximum that we roll with this season, and that's probably including a couple of the kids like Henry Woods, who played Wednesday night against Stoke and I thought he was really good. He didn't look out of place. He's only a kid. He's only played a handful of games, and they've all been sort of EFL trophy ones. But I thought he didn't look out of place, so it might be that he's one that gets thrust into the limelight a little bit more. But yeah, in terms of recruitment, sorry, I went off on a tangent. I think
it's okay.
Yeah, someone who can play left-hand side, essentially to cover left back and maybe another position. I did say maybe another striker, but if we're going to play just one up top, then maybe 3's enough. So it might be that we have to go and get another centre midfielder, because obviously we've lost 2 in there, and they're 2 of the most experienced ones in that key area, you'd say, where obviously in the games that they did start together, they both started at the base, in sort of a double pivot in front of the back 4. We've lost both of them. So in terms of real leadership from Stuart O'Keefe and Carl Dempsey, obviously they were captain and vice captain, and especially in terms of passing ability from Dempsey, it's a massive loss. But the 2 kids that have come in and played so far in the league have been really good, and they could end up being, real finds. And you just never know, do you? I mean, it's all right, people go, oh yeah, like Dominic Samuel's a good signing, but when we signed Tom Eaves, everyone went, oh, he scored 4 goals in 45 for Yeovil, he's a load of rubbish. And he got, 2 seasons and 40 goals later, he was a hero. So you never know. You can't really judge signings until they played 20, 30, 40 games, I always say. But I still think we probably need minimum of another couple, just to give us that little bit of leeway. Like tomorrow, we might not even be able to fill the bench again.
Talking about signings coming through. Oh, Okay, echoes in the background. Talking about signings there, Steve Evans in his pre-match notes kind of talked about Blackpool being high spenders and spending a lot of money this season. I'll put a quote graphic on the screen, but I'll read out what Evans said in full. Apart from Peterborough, Blackpool, are big spenders in the league in terms of their recruitment. They won on Saturday and we need to be ready. They signed CJ Hamilton, who I found in the reserves when I was at Mansfield. He's a real good player. They also signed young Jerry Yates, who I signed at Rotherham and gave him his debut. Bigging up these two, to be fair, so hopefully they go and score a few goals. He didn't say that. He's also a top striker, and they just signed Luke Garbutt from Everton. Again, 5 or 6 teams in the Championship wanted him. He goes on to talk about Neil Critchley here, that he's gone on to a good manager. He's only lost on the opening day against Plymouth, but I watched 50 minutes of that, and Blackpool should have been 5 or 6 ahead. Obviously, there's about Evans talking about Blackpool. Tom, I'll bring you in here. He's talked about Blackpool spending money there. Is Evans already getting in the excuses already ahead of Saturday?
It's a difficult one for me. I think it's a bit of a compliment. It's a bit of a warning as well to say they might not quite be ready for sort of what we've got to offer. But at the same time, is he sort of underplaying it, and he's got a plan to battle against them. So Steve Evans has been Steve Evans, in my opinion. He's known for winding people up, and I think, to be fair, the compliments he's paid us and the fact he knows about our players, etc., and he's done some research into Critchley, etc. I don't know. We'll see. I think you asked me this sort of earlier, but I don't think he's making excuses early. I think he's telling the truth, to be fair, isn't he? At the same time, like we have made some good signs and we do play some good football. So it's just stating facts. And if he knows about the 2 main players that we've signed this season, that's fair enough. But we'll see how they sort of start tomorrow to see if he's going to offer us the respect, or if he's going to, like Matt said earlier, whether they're going to go 4-3-3 and sort of match us and see who plays the better football. So we'll see. We might win 1-0 and he might make excuses up after that, but we'll see.
It's what managers tend to do post-game, isn't it? But Matt, what are your thoughts on what Steve Evans has said there? Obviously talking about players that he signed or saw when he was at other clubs. What do you think about what he said ahead of the game?
I think it's manager chat, and at the end of the day, it goes on everywhere. I'm sure if there was another podcast between 2 sets of fans, they'd be talking about what one of their managers has said. He's been around the block enough, hasn't he? He knows how to win games at this level, and he knows how to get under people's skin. He's made a career out of doing it, and I don't think he said anything untoward. I think he's right. You've made some very good signings. I'm looking at your squad on Soccer Base on my phone here. The 3 that stand out are probably the front 3, which is Yates, is it Keshi Anderson and CJ Hamilton, like he's mentioned. It's almost like I'm copying what he said, but they are the 3 that I wrote down. They look to be the 3 that could cause us a problem. They look to be the 3 that would say that you're probably going to play a different way to you played last season, when you probably went to it non-douillet a bit early, and it worked. You have to play the game to suit your strengths, and I don't think any club wouldn't. And you've got some other good players as well. I mean, Gary Medine has got loads of experience at this level. It's probably a great one to have around the dressing room. The keeper I used to like, I think he was at
Preston and Fleetwood.
Before he went to Preston, Chris Maxwell, James Husband, you've already mentioned, got loads of experience. I remember him having a decent spell at Borough a few years ago, and then he's been a bit nomadic since then. But I think he's got all the makings of a really good game. I really do.
Hopefully, and fans, bit of a push for both clubs. If you're not watching the game, you can watch it for £10 on iFollow, or a bit cheaper if you're living abroad. So a little bit of plug there for both Gillingham or free if you're a home season ticket holder. Yeah, so hopefully you've got one, Matt. There, you'll be watching it for free. I've got a comment here from John. You'll see it on the screen and all the watchers and listeners, but I'll read it out anyway. But John asks, what is Matt's thoughts on Steve Evans, and does Evans' past bother him? What are your thoughts? What do you have to reply to that one, Matt?
Like I said earlier in the piece, I said I wasn't, when it was first announced that he was being linked, and he'd been at a couple of games start of last year, and it all come out afterwards that he was actually doing Paul Lambert a favour, who's probably the only manager that he's actually fallen out with properly since he's been Gills manager. They had a bit of a set to in the home game last season, but I wasn't keen on the idea. I thought at the time there were younger managers about that had better philosophies, that were up and coming in the game. But since then, they've struggled, and that was Darryl Clark and Paul Hurst. I think they've been tarnished by the way a couple of jobs ended, either like Hurst at Ipswich, and then Darryl Clark towards the end of his reign at Bristol Rovers. But I'm sure he's got loads of money in the bank, so to speak, with the Rovers fans for what he's done there. But they were two that I was interested in trying to get in. There was a couple in non-league because I seriously didn't think we'd ever entertain the idea of Steve Evans or could afford him. But he became the manager, and like I said, if he makes us a better team and he makes us harder to beat and he wins us more points, then I've got no issue with it. And to be fair to Mr. Evans, he did a Q&A fan session straight after his appointment, and he answered any question head on. And he got asked about the Boston thing, and he answered it as honestly as he could. And fair play to him. And I've always said in any walk of life, I'll give everyone a second chance. I'm sure he's paid his dues. And if you put it in any other sort of business, if he does something wrong, takes his punishment, takes his medicine, he goes and gets another job. So why should football be any different? And from the footballing side, if you take away all the other layers of the onion, so to speak, I think he's been absolutely spot on for us. He's been a breath of fresh air. Credit the chairman from going away for jobs for the boys. That's what we used to call it as fans, ex-players, ex-coaches. I mean, there's a running joke as much as he's a legend, Andy Hessenthaler, but it was like a revolving door for a few years. He kept coming back in every capacity, I think, from tea lady to cleaner to coach to manager to director of football. But I think in the sense that Paul Scally took himself out of his comfort zone, took the club out of the comfort zone and said, we're going for someone who's got no previous affiliation with the club, who's probably a little bit nastier and a little bit more hardened to league football than the likes of Adi Pennock and Steve Lovell. And I think the proof's in the pudding, and it's worked so far. I mean, we've gone from relegation fodder for the last 2 or 3 years to comfortably being in the top half, and now suddenly having Blackpool fans talking about us being potential playoff contenders. So I think in that sense, he's done absolutely everything right. And I've certainly been one round, and he's done nothing for me that any other manager up and down the country doesn't do on a Saturday afternoon. He'll shout at officials if he thinks they're wrong, and he'll back his players, and he'll get himself in a little bit of bother. But I don't think any football fan wouldn't want their gaffer to do that, would they? I'm fed up of the days of watching my manager stand on a touchline in the rain with his hands folded, and we're getting beat 3-0 and just rolling over and having our belly tickled.
No, I can understand. I've met him a few times when I worked at Fleetwood, going to obviously Gillingham away and Gillingham at home, and he's a nice guy, obviously behind the scenes, but obviously on the football pitch, very passionate. And I guess players, they're coming in and they're going to buy into what he has to offer. And like you said, you've seen positive results and finished in the last few seasons, and that can only what players aspire to. And that's why Samuel's obviously come back, because he believes in what the manager's going to do.
Exactly, yeah. And he seems to have this knack, and no disrespect again to previous managers, but I don't think we'd be shopping in the market over the last 2 transfer windows in the summer where we'd be even looking at the likes of Alfie Jones and Tom O'Connor from Southampton, or Trey Coyle and Zach Medley from Arsenal, or Dominic Samuel or Kyle Dempsey. And don't get me wrong, I understand that the salary cap's probably had an effect on it, and we've probably been able to go into the market for some players that we wouldn't have done if people could go and spend 10 grand a week on players at this level. I think it's helped us out massively, but you've still got to convince someone to come to the football club, and you've still got to convince someone to come and want to play for you. And I think in that sense, he's been superb.
Talking about managers, we're going to listen to and watch, for those obviously listening probably later on or tomorrow morning ahead of the game. We're going to hear what Neil Critchley has to say ahead of the game against Gillingham.
It must be good to finally get off the mark and get those first 3 points.
Yeah, I think he just settles everyone down. You want to get off to a good start. Every club does. And winning breeds belief and confidence in what you're doing. So we've got a new group. Big turnaround in terms of numbers, personnel. And if we can pick up some quick wins on the way, then that belief will grow in what we're doing. And say it was a deserved 3 points. Arguably we played better at Plymouth the weekend before. But if we remain consistent with our level of performances, then we're going to be a tough team to play against this season.
And CJ Hamilton got both goals against Swindon. He's had a really impressive start to life here, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's been terrific, CJ. He's been fantastic all pre-season. He's a great person to have around every day, smiling, and seems to be loving his time here at the club, and he's great to work with. He's been a constant threat in every game he's played so far, so I'm delighted he's got off the mark with his 2 goals. I thought he was terrific on the day. He really was. But I also, he's also quick to acknowledge that a lot of his teammates were very good on the day as well, and there was rightfully quite a few players who came out with a lot of plaudits, and we want that to continue, obviously.
And lastly, looking ahead to this weekend, it'll be another tough test away at Gillingham, who recruited really well this summer as well.
Yeah, there's a team that's had a big turnaround in players. They've got some younger players that I'm aware of for different clubs, and they've had a big change in their squad. But playing against any type of Steve Evans team, you're gonna have to bring certain things to the table if you want to get a good result against them. Be a tough game at their place, because they're always tough to beat at Gillingham. So they'll be wanting to have a successful season. They're sort of in a transitional period like us, so tough game. However, if we can go there and play the way that we can play, then I say will be a tough test for them as well.
Yeah, that was Neil Critchley there speaking ahead of the game against Gillingham this Saturday. Tom, I'll bring you into the chat here. Obviously, many positives about opening 2 games. He's talked about the winning mentality. Just how important was it for him and the club to get the first win together against a Swindon side who did well on the opening day this season against Rochdale?
Yeah, it's massive. I think the more I listen to Critchley, the more I like him even more. I think you can see there it was just nice for him to get that win, and he wanted it for the fans and himself, but he could also hear the cogs ticking in his brain to say, what can I do next to ensure that we get the next 3 points, because I think he's well reserved, and I think he likes to think things through quite a lot, because I think he's very reserved when he talks about the opposition. I just think he pays the odd compliment, but is also focused fully on what he wants to do rather than what the opposition are going to do the week after. So it's massive for him as his first competitive win as a league manager as well. And I think he's just ready to start the next game. I think he doesn't show it too much, but I think he's generally really excited to be at the club and to watch his football team evolve in the weeks to come.
Yeah, definitely. We'll play the highlights from Blackpool's 2-0 against Swindon, and Matt, I'll bring you in later on. What did I say then? Sorry, Swindon. Matt, I'll bring you in. Sorry, and maybe ask about the players who you think could cause a danger for Gillingham. But here are the highlights from Blackpool's 2-0 win over Swindon. Yeah, there were the highlights from Blackpool's 2-0 home win over Swindon last weekend. Matt, looking at the highlights there, you kind of see that Blackpool want to play attacking football, be on the front foot. Do you think that if Gillingham sit back, they can really cause Blackpool problems? Or do you think Gillingham are going to be that side who come out and really put pressure on Blackpool?
I think Evans will say first 5 minutes will be key, and it'll be, go and get in your faces. And I'm sure Critchley will say the same about your boys towards us. I think the first 15 minutes could be pretty crucial in the sense of how the pattern of the game then goes. In terms of key players that you mentioned before, we just watched them highlights. I think it is clear I've already mentioned the 3 that are probably going to start up top for you. I'd imagine you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that's Yates and Anderson and CJ Hamilton. I think that they could cause us real problems if we let them, especially get in behind and get into dangerous areas. I noticed there was some comment. I think it was Steve Evans that actually mentioned and said that he thinks CJ Hamilton will be better suited to League One rather than League Two, because he might come in and go slightly under the radar, whereas he was known in League Two for a couple of seasons. So obviously people were doubling up on him, making sure he was man-marked, whereas he might just get a little bit more space at this level. And as I've already said, I think one concern for me is a slight lack of experience defensively. A couple of the goals we've conceded this season, especially in the Cups, have come from just one big through ball. and our centre backs have parted like the Red Sea a couple of times. So that's something certainly to work on, and that'll be an issue with obviously them three because they're not short of pace, any of the three of them. Obviously, the one you said as well is Luke Garbutt. I think if he plays, he's a very good player at this level. There was one I wanted to ask about was, is it Beryl Labula?
Labula, yeah, joined from Crawley in the summer,
he was highly rated at Crawley, wasn't he? Is he another type of wide player, I think, isn't he?
Yeah, so he
settled in well, or?
Yeah, he started in front of Sally Kai last against Swindon. So Keshi plays in the number 10 role, sort of behind the front three. He had a ropey first half, to say the least. I think a bit of a shock to the system, maybe, I don't know, but didn't settle in. But I think the second half he grew really well. So too early doors to judge, but the second half I would say much better. I don't know what Sam thought, but
again, I think he's coming to a new team, and he's been there a few weeks. But I thought second half he improved. I think the game's probably gone at 2-0, bar them having one chance at Swindon. But again, I think he's going to grow in confidence. And Tom, like we did have in the 2009-10 season, we had so many attacking options that if things weren't working with one front three, that Holloway was able to switch it to a different one or two up top. So I think it gives options to Critchley, but at the same time, players have to settle in. It's a new side. We talked about it on the review show on last Saturday and briefly in the Friday night show last weekend. So I think it's a time just embedding in these new players, and I think Blackpool just grow as the season goes on. And like I said, I think it was just important that Critchley got his first win as Blackpool manager, but also the club against a very strong Swindon side last weekend. So again, plenty of positives for Blackpool, I think, but it's just give them time to gel. What we're going to do now, we're going to look a bit, obviously looked at Blackpool's highlights. I don't want to go too much longer on the show. Got a few things to box through, but these are the highlights from Gillingham's game on Tuesday night. Tuesday night, I believe. So Tom, you can have a look at these highlights and see where Blackpool might be able to exploit them. I'm still trying to figure out why the referee disallowed that last goal. I'm not quite sure there, Matt, but what are your thoughts there?
Perfectly good goal. I sat there with Stocky when we was watching it and doing our match day live, and we just both looked at each other with a quizzical look on our faces, and we're like, we didn't appeal. There didn't seem to be any sort of pulling or handball or anything like that. But I mean, we'll take it. I mean, it didn't matter in the grand scheme of things at the end of the day. But yeah, I couldn't understand why it was ruled out. But like I said to you before, you've just showed the highlights. That's our problem. Look at the ball's come from inside their half, and it's travelled 50, 60 yards, and our centre backs are unfortunately have just been dragged out of position too easily. But this is the risk when you play with kids. I think Wednesday night, the oldest player in the back five was our left back, Conor Ogilvie, and he's 23, 24. And then we had three kids in front of him. Even tomorrow, we're likely to start with, well, hopefully, if Jack Bonham's fit, he's 27, and I'd imagine Ryan Jackson will start a right back, so that'll be 30, so that gives us more experience. But if we go with Jack Tucker and Christian Maghomer like we did in the league at Wigan last week, they're 20 and 22. Maghomer, I think, is probably slightly more experienced in the sense that he's played top tier football in Poland, which I'd imagine is fanatical, and you probably don't get afforded the opportunity to make too many errors before their fan bases get on your back, so to speak, because they're a bit crazy out there, I believe. But yeah, it's a young side, and I think we'd be more experienced defensively tomorrow in the sense that them two hopefully will come back in. But it's a key area down the spine of any team, and we've got two centre backs that are early 20s. We're likely to play two holding midfielders that are still teenagers in Scott Robertson and Josh Eccles. As good as they are and as good as they've been, it's still a concern. You can't expect to get through a whole season, I don't think, without them making one or two errors. So I think it's key for the experienced players like Jackson, if he starts, or Jack Bonham, if he comes back in. Maybe if Jacob Mellis plays in front of him, he's going to be relied on to work hard and dropping off the ball. The front three will be young as well, I'd imagine. Well, especially the two wingers. We don't know whether Samuel will start, but I'd imagine we'll go with Dane Oliver whether that's as a one or as part of a two. He's 28, but it's just that key area, the centre back and the central midfield area where very little Football League experience.
Tom, I'll bring you in. I know the weather's not very good down where you are, so apologies if any of the audio or wind whistles through the windows, as we might have heard. But we've looked at the highlights there from Gillingham's game against Stoke. You look at that and you expect with Blackpool's pace that they can really cause this Gillingham side some problems on Saturday.
Yeah, I think we can cause a lot of teams problems regardless of who's playing. But that looked like when we played Stoke and a bit when we played Plymouth as well, when they played a ball in behind and a bit of inexperience. Who's going to get the ball? Who's marking the man, sort of thing. So if we get any sniff of that tomorrow with us sort of settling down as we have been, creating chances against Swindon, then we should score. It's as simple as that, really. We've got the quality to do it. Not being cocky, but it's just we should score. We should have scored against Plymouth and we should have scored more against Swindon. So if there's one thing we're going to do, if we are going to concede goals, I think we will score goals too. So fingers crossed we can cut through the middle or down the wings and CJ causes us problems.
Yeah, definitely. Talking about goals there, look at kind of the last two meetings last season and the times they met before. We'll briefly touch on all the times they've met 41 times. I think it goes back to 1914, doesn't it, Tom? The first time we played them in the FA Cup. I think Gillingham picked up a 1-0 victory that day. But Blackpool have won 15 of the encounters between the two sides, Gillingham winning 12, and there have been 14 draws in all meetings, as I alluded to before. The last meeting was in Feb 2020 at home on the Fylde Coast. Gillingham won 3-2 that evening. A late goal fest, is to say the least there. And with Blackpool taking the lead in the 7th minute, thanks to an Armand Nongelé goal. And we'll take a look at the highlights because, again, it's good to look back at these times, and especially when fans are in the stadium. So I'll get the game up when Blackpool lost 3-2 to Gillingham. Yeah, apparently plenty of goals there, and I think Blackpool equalised in the 90th minute, and then Gillingham go and grab one in the 92nd minute. Matt, did you go to that game or?
I didn't go, not on a Tuesday night. No, it's still one ground that I've not got to Blackpool. It always seems to be one that ends up on a busy weekend when I've got something on, or a Tuesday night in the middle of winter, and I don't fancy it. I'm not going to lie. On a Tuesday evening, like I say, it always seems to be sort of November, December as well, or February as that one was. But it's interesting watching that because I think only one of the 5 goal scorers actually remains at either of the clubs. That's John Akinde. I think that's his only goal for Gills since he signed in January. All the others have departed and moved on to pastures new. So again, we go back to it. It should be a very good open game. 2 teams that I think could be better offensively than defensively. And I suppose if you're a neutral, it might be one to get on. Certainly, if you have a bet on both teams to score.
Yeah, hope for Tom. We've looked at obviously games going back a few years, and like I said, there's plenty of goals, and hopefully for both sets of fans and the neutrals who might watch it, as Matt alluded to, hopefully there's some goals, and we know with Blackpool that there's going to be plenty of entertainment. Yeah,
hopefully not too many goals for Gillingham, but as we saw from there, we both like to attack, and Steve Evans likes to attack, especially at home as well. So I do see goals tomorrow. I said against Swindon last week, to be fair, I said I think there'll be a few goals. I think arguably Swindon should have scored a couple. They had, unlucky not to score at 2-0. But I think Nottingham and Epketeta at the back were much improved. I think Nottingham now is the most successful aerial challengers in the league, and is settling in a lot better, and he was a lot more solid in his positioning. So providing we can weather the storm, if they do come as that's early, I think I'm fingers crossed we pick up 3 points as well tomorrow. So.
Tom, I'll put you under the spot, and again, people watching, leave us your predictions. We've had a few in the comment section already, which we'll show on the screen. But Tom, what are your thoughts score-wise?
3-1 away win.
Someone, Gary Ford, has said the exact same thing. I was hoping you'd say the same scoreline there, but 3-1. Goal scorers, put another spot again.
Yates is going to open his account. Fancy a goal for Keshi. Let's go Yates 2. Penalty at 2-1 to make it 3-1.
Hopefully. We'll come to you, Matt, in a second. But Gary Ford said, I'm going for a 3-1 victory to Poole. Really enjoyed the game last week and was great to be back inside the ground. He was one of the 1,000 lucky people to actually get a ticket. So hope you enjoyed that one, Gary. We must not, Gutty will be not back for a while. Obviously, new regulations and government things that have come out. But I felt more safe in the ground than anywhere else I've been, which is a great statement. And again, credit to the club for hosting the game at short notice. And fingers crossed, despite the 6 months kind of given time, we're in the stadiums sooner rather than later. Matt, I'll come to you next. Your score predictions for this weekend's game?
Well, unsurprisingly, I'm not going to go 3-1 Blackpool.
That's a shame.
I'm going to go 2-1 Gills.
Scorers for you?
I'm trying to remember who I said on my preview. I've got to get this right. Otherwise I look like a writer. I said Verdane Oliver, and I think I said Trey Coyle as well. And I said that Jordan Graham has set at least one of them up. So
we'll see. We'll see who collects the money out of their betting accounts.
It'll be 0-0 now.
5 o'clock. It will be, won't it? That's typical, to be fair. Another comment's coming from Michael Hay. I can see the mighty running out easy winners, and I predict another 3-1 scoreline. Come on, you Poole. Just whilst I look, sorry, glitched there. Whilst I look through some more comments, I'm going to go for a Blackpool win. I think 2-1. I'm going to go for. I hope Yates gets on the score sheet for the first time this season. I think he worked hard last weekend. Deserves just a reward, really. Yeah, I think if it's Mitchell, who someone corrected me last week, should have crossed it. But again, he has to be there in the right place to get on the end of them. Him, and I'm going to go for. Who do I go for next? I'm going to go for Nottingham. I'm going to put it out there. I think Nottingham might score from a set piece, to be fair. I've got some more comments flying in as well. Great to get those. 3-2, which John Aspinall reckons. Matthew Smith, Poole need to start quicker than the last two games. I completely agree with that one. Mick, he says 2-0 to Blackpool. Steve says a clean sheet, 2-0 to Blackpool. Phil Hornby, he gets his comments in as well. It's going to be 2-2 with CJ bagging another 2 goals. That'll be a great sight to see. Hopefully, Phil, someone bags a third for Blackpool. Oh, it's a long journey back home, so hopefully they can celebrate with a win there. So again, keep your comments coming. We'll keep them going through. Last section now, because we are getting towards the hour mark, and I did tell Matt that it will be 45 minutes max.
That's fine. I didn't realise. I didn't even check, to be fair.
No, time flies when you're having...
shouted yet, so I must be okay for another 5 minutes.
We always have a bit of a section on this show where players who have played for both teams. Again, we've had a few comments in this section already, which we'll come to. The first one I want to talk about is Joe Martin, a left-back, 31 years of old, began his career at Tottenham before joining Blackpool on loan in 2008. He made the move permanent in the same year and was at the club for another 2 years, a total of 24 appearances at left-back. I always quite liked Joe Martin. I thought he was that kind of attacking full-back who came in and did a really good job. Obviously, Stephen Craney coming into the side, and we all know how well he did for Blackpool during his time on the Fylde Coast. But again, going back to Joe Martin, he joined Gillingham in 2010, where he spent 5 seasons in Kent, and he played 161 games and scored 8 goals for them. What were your thoughts, Matt, on Joe Martin as a player, if you can remember? Like, attacking fullback, loves to get forward and score goals, as we can see. But what are your thoughts on him?
Yeah, I remember. I think he was a very good left back for us. He's one of them very few people that's won a league title with us as well. We've only ever won 2 in our entire existence, and he won the League 2 title with us in in 2013. I thought he was decent enough defensively. He was never out and out quick. I think he knew his limits. Decent set piece as well. Could take a free kick. Scored a few good goals for us from free kicks just outside the box. And yeah, I think he had 5 really decent years with us. And I think sometimes he gets sort of forgotten about and maybe slightly harshly treated by Gills fans because I think he left and went to Millwall when historically we don't get on. But for the 5 years he was here, he was very, very good for us. And like I say, there's only ever been 2 squads that have won a league title for us in 126 years, and Joe Martin's one of the select few. So no, I thought he was a very decent player for us in his time.
Tom, your thoughts? Do you remember Joe Martin in the 24 games he played for Blackpool?
Yeah, short spells in it, but liked to play football and he wasn't scared to attack. So I think we saw that in Mitchell last week. And as soon as you see someone who's a bit fearless in going forward and wants to bring the team forward from the back, then you enjoy it. So not much negativity to say around him. So just echo what you both said.
Another player to play for both. We'll get to the viewers' comments very shortly. Jack Payne. Obviously, there's been a few of us on the podcast who have got Jack Payne's mixed up, but he came through the ranks at Gillingham in early 2000s before signing his contract in 2008. He played over 100 appearances for them before joining Blackpool in 2016, where he helped Blackpool win the League Two playoff final over Exeter at Wembley. Again, a player there, Matt, who, again, great career, great servant for Gillingham, and he's not gone on to have a bad career, has he?
He was very good for us. I think he made his debut at 16. I think he's still one of the youngest debutants ever in the history of the club, and I think he's one of them weird ones where I think he played like 20 minutes at the back end of that season and won Young Player of the Year. Because quite frankly, we were crap that season and got relegated. But he was one of the very few bright sparks, and then he started to get more games in League Two under Andy Hessenthaler. And I think the only disappointment for Jack was probably that he didn't help us get in the playoffs or get promoted, and then he left halfway through the season when we won the championship because Peterborough and their money came calling, and it was a step up to the championship. And you wouldn't begrudge any player that who's playing in League Two to jump up 2 divisions. And like you say, he's had a decent career. I'm quite surprised that he's in non-league now. I still think he's got plenty to offer in the Football League. And I interviewed him for the channel back in May, and he's a really good lad as well. He's a nice bloke, a real family-orientated fella, and just wants his best, to look after his family and his children. And yeah, be just a little bit surprised, like I say, for all the ability he had as a kid. I'm surprised that he's knocking about in National League at the moment. I thought he was still good enough to play in the EFL.
I've had a few comments in here, and I know, Matt, you have a story, but we'll start with you, Tom, first. Gary Ford says 3 players play for both clubs: Steve Banks, John Hills, and Tony Butler. Steve Banks, great that we have these very knowledgeable viewers on the Seasiders podcast. But we were talking off air about Steve Banks, obviously now Blackpool's goalkeeper coach. But obviously you're a little bit older than me, so you might know a little bit more about him. So I'll let you two discuss him, but we'll start with you, Tom, first.
No, remember Banksy more so for like the 98 season. I was only sort of 7 or 8 at the time as well, getting into Blackpool. But again, my dad telling me a bit about the past. Steve Banks was a really good keeper for us. I think 150 odd appearances for us. Fans' favourite, really down to earth character, superb shot stopper. And yeah, sort of too young to really remember a few of the games he played, but looking back on sort of highlights, etc. He was brilliant, and I know he obviously still loves the club because he's still here. So Matt will probably have something to say in terms of his actual game time. But yeah, a real good character.
Go on, Matt. You tell me a story before, and I think the listeners might quite enjoy this.
Yeah, he had 2 spells with us, and I mean, he was with us right at the start of his career in '93, and I think he played. I'm just looking here, cheating. I think he played around sort of 70, 80 games in 2 seasons with us. But then I think he left because that was the time when we were really struggling and we nearly went out of business. So I can't remember back that far, obviously, because it was before I was going regularly. But I think he might have been one of them that was part of a fire sale type sort of thing to obviously try and raise funds. But he came back later on in his career, and any Gills fan who's watching or knows anything about the club will remember that save at Stoke on the last day of the 2003-04 season. Helped to stay up on goal difference in the championship, and it's probably his defining moment in a Gills shirt, and why wouldn't it be? It was an unbelievable save, and I'm not saying he was as good as his namesake Gordon, but in terms of saves, it's right up there as one of the best I've seen a goalkeeper make for Gillingham Football Club. And then you add into that the importance of it as well. It's an unbelievable stop, and it's on YouTube if you want to go and have a look.
Yeah, well, sorry, so I don't know if you were going to come in there, Tom, and add something to what Matt said there.
No, he said it was similar to Gordon Banks. I said it would probably felt like it at the time, considering the importance of it.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's probably what makes it slightly better because of the magnitude of the save. And we knew if he hadn't kept it out, we'd have been relegated. And unfortunately, we went a year later and we sort of went down with a bit of a whimper. But I know you shouldn't really celebrate staying up on the last day. It means you've generally been not very good for the best part of the season. But in the championship and being Gillingham, I think we was allowed a little bit. and it's a great memory.
Yeah, we'll talk about. We obviously spoke about Jacob Mellis before as well. 29 years of old, began his career at Chelsea, came through the ranks there, joined Blackpool in the 2014-15 season, where he only played 13 games for the club. Right, quite of a bit of a strange time for Blackpool. Obviously under the old regime, the old owners, which we won't go into. Obviously, then joined Gillingham recently and has only got 2 games to his name there. But the other one, obviously, comments coming in was John Hills, a player I kind of, growing up, obviously know about him. Obviously, playing in the team that obviously won promotion in 2001, I believe. Please correct me. I should know my Blackpool knowledge, to be fair. But again, an exciting player. And when you look at kind of left backs or left wingers that Blackpool have had in the time, he's got to be right up there, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's one of my favourite players of old. Sort of in the classic sort of Paul era, should I say? Scored a fantastic goal at Charlton, where we played. I think it was the FA Cup third round. I think Charlton in the Premier League. He scored a goal to put us 1-0 up, I believe, and we just lost out in that game to a late penalty, I believe it was. But we done ourselves justice that game. And I remember when I was mascot for Blackpool, we played against Cardiff. He scored in a 1-0 win as well. So it's a little personal sort of a reconciliation of him, but yeah, he was a real solid player, and again one that loved the club and loved the fans as well. I'm sure the viewers will sort of back me up on that. So
yeah, Matt, what did you kind of watch him much in the 2003 to 2005 season, John Hills?
Yeah, I think he was with us for 2 seasons. Unfortunately, he came in at the wrong time in terms of the fact that we'd had 3 really good seasons in the Championship and punched well above our weight, and we'd finished 13th, 12th and 11th, which are still to this day our 3 highest ever finishes in our existence. And then, excuse me, the team started to break up, and I don't think we replaced the people that we were losing with the same type of quality. I mean, we lost the likes of Carter Saba and Marlon King, and we never really replaced them with like for like in terms of quality. But John was a good, solid pro, and I don't think any Gills fans have got anything bad to say against him in terms of application and attitude and work rate and all that type of thing. It's just unfortunate that he came in an era when we were just starting to struggle, and that really good Championship side had been built up from the Tony Pulis and the Peter Taylor days, and then when Andy Hessenthaler took over it was just started to fall apart. And unfortunately, his 2 seasons ended with us staying up on the final day and then getting relegated on the final day. So probably not the greatest 2 years of his career from a personal point of view, but in terms of Gills fans, I don't think many people have had too much bad to say against John Hills at all.
No, definitely a kind of a model for most young professionals probably at the time, and players around. Get like Tom said, he probably voucher for that, most Blackpool fans and Gillingham fans who saw him. It's 2 years down there. We're going to call it an end soon. Just going to read through a few more comments. So if you've got one last comment before the game tomorrow, do let me know. But Mick says here, I remember Blackpool playing Gillingham away years ago on a Tuesday night. Booked Tuesday afternoon off work to travel. Just met the missus at the time, who knows nothing about football. She called me at 5:30-ish to ask what the result was. When I told her that I was on the M25, stuck in traffic, and 2 hours before kickoff, she wasn't highly surprised. Great stories. I'm guessing so many fans have got stuck on the M25. I've done it with work before, but again, great stories of fans sharing their memories of Blackpool versus Gillingham there. I've got a comment here. Ray Gregson says, thanks for your contribution. Matt, again, great to have you on the show. So
no,
again,
it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Like I said at the beginning, it's been a real pleasure being invited on. So thank you.
No, and obviously other fans watching would like to get you involved as well when Blackpool are
more
playing your
fans
team.
Got involved and started giving some more positive score predictions, but never mind.
Maybe next time, maybe for the reverse fixture, we can get some more comments or help you out of your show as well. So again, we'll make sure we tweet your kind of Gills in the blood as much as we can when we're promoting the show tonight and tomorrow. But again, thanks for coming on. Hopefully I've not upset the missus too much with you being an hour. Tom as well, huge thank you for you joining us this evening once again.
That's been a pleasure. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And Tom, sorry, yeah, great to have you on as well. Again, thanks to all the listeners and viewers. This is going to go out as well tonight and tomorrow for people to listen just the audio version. So apologies if it goes a bit quiet on videos, but that is the reason there. The Seasiders podcast will be live again tomorrow at 5:30 for the review of the Gillingham game. So make sure you tune to that with John Aspinall hosting the show. Unfortunately, I'm at work, so can't do it. Or watch the game, which is very annoying. But if you want to join us and have your word, stay tuned on social media and find out how you can be live on the show. Until then, see you next Friday.
change.